Hey everyone! We are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content and it is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button right now as we proceed. Hello everybody and welcome back, because we need to talk about something that's flying completely under the radar right now, and when you see what we've uncovered about Kazuma Okamoto, you're going to understand why the Blue Jays might have just pulled off the most underrated signing of the entire offseason. While everyone was obsessing over big-name free agents and blockbuster trades, while the media was hyping up other Japanese players coming to MLB, the Toronto Blue Jays quietly secured a player who could end up absolutely shocking the entire league. We're talking about a complete hitter with elite metrics across the board, a guy who doesn't just hit for power or make contact, but does both at an absolutely elite level. The more you dig into Kazuma Okamoto's numbers, the more you look at what he accomplished in Japan's Nippon Professional Baseball League, the more boxes get checked off. And I am getting increasingly excited about the prospect of what this guy is going to do in a Blue Jays uniform. So buckle up, because we're about to break down exactly why Kazuma Okamoto could become one of the best offensive players in the American League, and why the Blue Jays just might have found their replacement for Bo Bichette and then some. Let's start with the elephant in the room. The Blue Jays lost Bo Bichette in free agency, which left a significant hole in their lineup that needed to be addressed. You can't just lose a player of that caliber and expect everything to be fine without making moves. Enter Kazuma Okamoto, the big offensive signing of the offseason. And here's the thing that's becoming increasingly clear the more you examine his profile. This wasn't just some consolation prize or backup plan. This might actually turn out to be an absolute home run of a signing that makes the Blue Jays better than they were before. When you start diving into Okamoto's sabermetrics, when you really take the time to evaluate what he did in NPB against the best competition Japan has to offer, it's box after box after box getting checked off. We're not talking about a one-dimensional power hitter who strikes out constantly. We're not talking about a contact guy with no pop. We're talking about a genuinely complete offensive player who excels in every meaningful category. And the Blue Jays desperately need him to be that guy. They need him to become a stable force in their offense for the next 4 years. And based on everything the data is telling us, he's got an excellent chance to do exactly that. Let me show you what I'm talking about with some actual numbers, because this is where things get absolutely wild. When you look at Okamoto's metrics in Japan compared to everybody else who plays the position, it's essentially the NPB version of Baseball Savant for MLB players. The same kinds of categories, the same statistical analysis, just applied to Japanese professional baseball. And Kazuma Okamoto's numbers are absolutely off the charts. 4 OPS+, which measures his overall offensive production and what he's expected to do on the field, he's in the 100th percentile. That means he's literally number 1 in all of Japanese baseball. That's not bad. That's not just pretty good. That's being the absolute best offensive player in an entire professional league. But it gets even better when you dig deeper into the specific skill categories. His isolated power, which measures what he does with the long ball separated from his batting average, sits at the 98th percentile. That tells you this guy has legitimate game-changing power that can impact games in an instant. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is what separates good players from truly elite ones. His strikeout percentage and his walk percentage are both in the top 10 in all of baseball in terms of percentile ranking. Think about what that means for a second. This is a guy with massive power who doesn't strike out constantly like most big sluggers do. This is a guy who understands the strike zone well enough to draw walks at an elite rate. That combination of power with plate discipline is going to be a major factor in how the Blue Jays offense performs this season. When you look at this complete statistical profile, you see a genuinely complete player. Sometimes you see guys who are big-time sluggers, right? They take huge hacks, they hit massive home runs, but they also strike out in 30 or 35% of their at-bats because they're so aggressive and reckless. That's absolutely not the case with Kazuma Okamoto. He has elite power production, but he also rarely strikes out compared to league average. And his walk-to-strikeout ratio is in the 99th percentile, which tells you he knows exactly when to take his hacks and when to lay off pitches just outside the zone and draw a walk instead. That patient, disciplined approach honestly defined what the Toronto Blue Jays offense was all about last year. They got away from being overly aggressive and swinging at everything. They were patient at the plate. They fouled off tough pitches and worked counts in their favor. Kazuma Okamoto is somebody who can do all of that naturally. He can do serious damage when he gets his pitch, but he can also stay patient and pass the baton to the next guy when he needs to. That's exactly the type of hitter you want in the middle of your lineup protecting your best players. Let's look at some of his actual home run production numbers in NPB, because this is where you really see the consistency and dominance. Over in Japan, he was absolutely filthy with the home run ball. We're talking about a guy who was basically money for 30 home runs every single season. Year after year, 30 bombs. That's elite power production at any level of professional baseball. Now, in 2024, that wasn't the case. He didn't reach 30. But when you look closer at 2025, you see he hit 15 home runs. And here's the crucial detail. He only played in basically half the games that season. So he was legitimately on pace to significantly exceed 30 home runs if he'd played a full schedule. This is somebody who was doing it consistently for a long period of time among the absolute best players in Japan. What gets me most excited is that you usually see players in baseball giving up power for contact, or sacrificing contactability to maximize their power. It's almost always a trade-off. But Kazuma Okamoto isn't giving up either one right now. He's elite at both making contact and hitting for massive power simultaneously. And this is where I'm most confident about his transition to MLB. When you have those two core attributes working for you at such a high level, the ability to make consistent contact without striking out combined with legitimate game-changing power, when you make the jump to MLB, okay, let's say you lose a little bit of value in one of those categories. Maybe you don't hit for quite as much power against better pitching. Maybe you don't make contact quite as frequently. Well, you've still got that other elite attribute that you're so good at. It gives you a safety net. It gives you a much higher floor than most international signings have. So I feel very confident with this type of player profile. The floor is incredibly sound because there's such a strong baseline skill set he's walking in with. But I also think the ceiling could be very, very high, higher than most people are giving him credit for. Let me show you something that's a really small sample size, so take it with a grain of salt, but I think it's important to demonstrate. This is NPB, these aren't MLB players he's facing on a regular basis. But against the NPB players who have made the jump to MLB and become stars, Okamoto was doing serious damage against those guys too. In his career against Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who's now one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, Okamoto had 8 total at-bats. He went 4 for 8 in that limited experience, with 1 home run, 2 RBIs, and an OPS of 1.375. Now obviously this is the tiniest sample size imaginable. That's basically 2 or 3 games worth of at-bats against a starting pitcher. But the point is, against the absolute best of the best pitchers in NPB, guys who've proven they can dominate in MLB, Kazuma Okamoto was capable of doing this kind of damage. And Yamamoto is just one example. He did it against numerous elite pitchers in Japan that most fans have never even heard of but who were absolutely dominant. There's a big argument out there that MLB pitching is going to be significantly better and more challenging. And yes, I agree there's some validity to that. There's maybe more consistency and depth in terms of the velocities and movement patterns you're going to face over here in the big leagues. But the fundamental fact is that Okamoto's approach works against any type of pitcher. Good, bad, elite, it doesn't matter. His approach is fundamentally sound. And when you have a sound approach built on plate discipline and pitch recognition, you're going to have success regardless of the league. I love the potential matchup between him and hitting coach David Popkins. I genuinely feel like there isn't going to be as much of an adjustment period for Okamoto because he already approaches his at-bats in NPB with a very similar philosophy to what Popkins teaches, and he loves doing damage when he gets his pitch. I was honestly surprised looking at all these numbers and realizing how little media attention Okamoto got compared to other Japanese players. I totally get why Munetaka Murakami was talked about constantly. He's definitely really exciting and tantalizing, and he's younger than Okamoto. But I am genuinely stunned that Kazuma Okamoto wasn't more of a headliner name coming out of Japan. I heard endless coverage about other players. I heard about Roki Sasaki quite a bit. I heard about Murakami constantly. I didn't hear nearly as much about Okamoto. I think that's why when the Blue Jays initially signed him, my reaction was just, oh, okay, that's fine. Because I'd been fed this narrative that he's just a contact hitter, nothing special. And I thought, okay, he's just a contact guy. But he's so much more than that. The more you dig into these numbers, the more you realize there's significantly more here than the media was initially letting on. So across the board, everything we've looked at is leading me to believe that Kazuma Okamoto is going to be genuinely successful at the MLB level. Now, we do have a couple projection systems that have weighed in. Steamer Projections thinks he's going to bat .251 with an OPS of 770, 22 home runs, and 69 RBIs. If I'm being completely honest, that sounds really conservative to me. I like his batting average to be a little bit higher than that. I like his home run total to be higher. I like his OPS to probably be around 800 or above. And to back up where I'm coming from, there was an excellent article written by Sportsnet that looked at the contract Okamoto got and related it to players who've gotten similar contracts before. They took those comparable players and looked at what they accomplished, basically creating a list of guys you can reasonably expect Okamoto to potentially play like. Obviously, this is all theoretical because he hasn't done it yet in MLB, but the names that pop up in this analysis are really encouraging. The range of potential outcomes includes players like Jarren Duran, Anthony Santander when healthy, Vinny Pasquantino, Jorge Polanco, Christian Walker, Jackson Chourio, Cody Bellinger, Brian Reynolds, and Royce Lewis when healthy. These are legitimately above-average players who are impact bats on their respective teams. We obviously don't know for certain that Okamoto will reach those levels, but this is a pretty reasonable range of outcomes. And honestly, I expect him to fall somewhere in that range. That Steamer projection we looked at earlier, I think that's probably the safe floor, the conservative expectation. The upside is what gets me most excited. If he produced those Steamer numbers in 2026 for his first season, I wouldn't be disappointed at all. I think he'll get settled in, get comfortable with MLB pitching, and then go on an absolute heater at some point and become the big impact bat the Blue Jays desperately need. When I look at this graph using value estimates to reverse engineer expectations, these are the types of players I genuinely see Okamoto potentially becoming. Marcell Ozuna, Nathaniel Lowe, Teoscar Hernandez. I've thrown that Teoscar comparison out multiple times now, and it really feels like this could be the Blue Jays' next Japanese Teoscar Hernandez. Kazuma Okamoto providing serious protection and thump in the middle of that lineup just like Teoscar used to do during his best years in Toronto. I see a legitimate pathway for him to become that caliber of player. So when I think about this Blue Jays offense and the players with the highest upside on this team right now, obviously there's Vladdy, and he's going to be the guy, the cornerstone of everything they do. I still really like George Springer for 2026. I think he's going to put up solid production. But I'm looking at Kazuma Okamoto right after those guys as being one of the next biggest contributors on this team. If he performs anywhere close to what his metrics suggest he's capable of, the Blue Jays offense is going to be absolutely scary to face from top to bottom. So here's what I need from you. If you're as excited as I am about what Kazuma Okamoto could bring to the Blue Jays, if you think he's going to shock the MLB and become one of the best offensive additions of the offseason, smash that like button right now. Drop a comment and let me know where you think Okamoto is going to finish in terms of home runs and OPS. Do you think he's going to exceed those conservative projections? Do you think he's going to be the next Teoscar? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we're going to be covering everything Blue Jays as spring training gets underway and we get closer to seeing Kazuma Okamoto in action. This could be the start of something really special in Toronto, and you're not going to want to miss a single moment of it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.